Okay, so we will continue our discussion on compressors. And we had discussed in the previous class. I hope you can see the screen. Can somebody confirm?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the previous class, we had discussed about centrifugal compressors. Okay. So what was the main working principle of centrifugal compressors? In centrifugal compressors, during the rotation, the fluid moves from the inner part of the, say, inner portion of the rotor to the outer portion, and as a result of centrifugal action, its pressure and velocity increase. And then there is a set of diffusers in which this extra velocity that had been generated in the rotor, the kinetic energy is converted back to increase in static pressure. So again, static pressure increases further. So as a result, we get high pressure rise in the centrifugal compressor. So the other type of compressor which is widely used. So there can be many other types of compressors also. Okay, it does not mean that because we are only studying centrifugal and axial flow compressors, these are the only types of compressors. These are the only types of compressors which are used for jet engines. Okay, there can be reciprocating compressors like IC engines, somewhat like IC engines where you compress using a piston cylinder arrangement. Okay. But those type of compressors deliver the fluid not continuously. Like you compress it, again the fluid is released. Again you compress it, again it is released. So they are not suitable for jet engines, okay, where you need a constant source of high pressure air. So that's why we are just studying about centrifugal and axial flow compressors. These are also known as rotodynamic compressors. They are based on rotation, unlike reciprocating compressors. So for axial flow compressors, the main difference with respect to centrifugal compressors is that the flow comes in axially and also goes out axially. Okay. This is like say a single stage is like more like a fan that you see at home, or like an exhaust fan. So you can see here multi-stage axial flow compressor. So what happens is that there are a set of rotor blades. Okay. So each rotor has multiple rotor blades like a fan arranged on the shaft. Okay. On a hub which is set on the shaft, like you can see in this below picture. And because the shaft is being rotated by the turbine, this set of rotor blades also rotate at the same angular velocity. And in between each set of rotor blades, so you can see here, this is the first set of rotor blade, yellow color blades, and then this is second set of rotor blades, this is third set, fourth set, like this. So there are multiple sets here. Okay. In between each of them, which is not shown here, there will be another set of blade which is fixed to the casing, which are known as stator blades. Okay. So the rotor blades consist of the rotor stage, and the stator blades consist of the stator. Each combination of rotor and stator constitutes a stage, okay, stage of axial compressor. So if I say that there are 12 stages in this axial compressor, it means that there are 12 set of rotors and 12 set of stators. One rotor plus one stator is a stage. Okay. So what are the roles of this rotor and stator? So the fluid enters the rotor at a relatively lower velocity. Okay. Relatively lower velocity. And then because of the action of the rotor, the velocity increases. There is also increase in the static pressure because of diffusion effect, like a somewhat like a nozzle. And but the main change is that the velocity increases. Okay. Then when the flow is passed through the stator blades, the stators act like a diffuser. Okay. So already we have high velocity fluid. Now this high velocity fluid passes through the stator blades, and this kinetic energy is reduced. The velocity is reduced, and further increase of pressure occurs. Okay. So finally, when the fluid comes out of a single stage, its velocity is again reduced to whatever was the initial velocity, somewhat similar to that, but the net pressure has increased significantly. And this rise of net pressure has occurred due to the work input which is coming through the shaft. Okay, so the entire work input occurs in the rotor. Rotor increases the static pressure, which means that it increases the static enthalpy plus the kinetic energy. So it increases the stagnation enthalpy by a significant amount. Then in the stator, there is no change in the stagnation enthalpy, but the static enthalpy rises further and kinetic energy is reduced. Okay. So that is how it works. Then again, it enters the second stage rotor at a low velocity, similar to the velocity at the inlet of the first rotor. And again, the same thing occurs. So again, the velocity increases, slight increase of pressure occurs. Again, it goes through second set of stators. Again, the kinetic energy is reduced, leading to further increase of static enthalpy and static pressure. So each stage can increase the pressure by say around 1.5 times. So if you need a very large increase in pressure like 20 times or 30 times, you need a large number of stages. So typical modern jet engines, large turbofan engines or turbojets where you need very high compression ratios, use a very large number of stages of axial flow compressors. So the main we have already discussed, I think, comparison with centrifugal compressors. So the main drawback is that the compression you obtain in a single stage of axial compressor is much less than that of a centrifugal compressor. Centrifugal compressors typically can now go to 4-5 times. The pressure ratio is around 4 to 5 times. Whereas in axial flow compressors, it is around only 1.5 times. Okay. So you need much larger number of stages. But there are so many other advantages that only axial flow compressors are used in modern jet engines. What are the advantages we have studied? One is that for the same mass flow rate, the cross-sectional area of the engine, jet engine, is much less. Okay. So the entire cross-sectional area is actually occupied by the inlet air. So you do not need extra cross-sectional area which is blocked, unlike say centrifugal compressor, where the inlet area is much less than the overall cross-sectional area. Okay, in this case, the inlet area is equal to the cross-sectional area. And second is that the flow direction is amenable for multi-staging. Like the flow comes out also axially, so it can automatically be passed on to the next stage directly. Okay. Again, unlike centrifugal compressors, where the flow comes out radially and it has to be turned back to make it go into the axial direction. If you have another stage here, it has to be turned back and made it flow in the axial direction. So some extra length is wasted there. So because of this, mainly because of the less cross-sectional area and less drag. Drag is the most important factor in jet engines because ultimately it is related to fuel economy. So because of less drag, axial flow compressors are used jet engines. So here you can see one schematic diagram, and you can see that the first blade is also known as inlet guide vane. It is like a stator blade. It is static. You can see it is connected to the casing. So the role of the inlet guide vane is to change the flow direction. Okay, so the flow comes in axially, and it has to be changed in a direction which is suitable for entry to the first rotor blade. Because the rotor blade is moving at a certain velocity. Okay, so and depending on the blade angle, so to make the flow enter the rotor blade smoothly, okay, without any say. So if the rotor blade has a certain shape, I will show you in a schematic diagram, has a certain shape, the flow should enter smoothly tangentially to the entry of the rotor blade. Otherwise, there will be lot of losses if it impacts the rotor blade at a certain angle. So that the flow enters the rotor blade smoothly, the angle has to be appropriately say designed. So the flow angle. So, and that angle is imparted by the inlet guide vanes. Then you have this first set of rotor blades and this first stator blades. Rotor blades you can see is, are attached to the shaft, and the stator blades are attached to the casing. So then this is second stage rotor blade, second stage stator blade. This will be third stage, fourth stage, and so on. Okay, and the cross sectional area decreases and the blade lengths decrease, as you can see, because of decrease in specific volume, because the pressure is being increased in the axial flow compressor or in any compressor for the same mass flow rate. If we keep the velocity same, axial velocity same, okay, by design, then the cross sectional area has to decrease. So typically what is done, the cross sectional area is decreased in such a way that the axial velocity remains similar. Okay. So as a result, the blade length decrease. So now there are different ways to also decrease the cross sectional area. This is not the only way. Okay, there are other designs where the outer. So here you can see that the casing is shaped like this. Okay, so the casing, so the shaft diameter or the hub diameter remains constant. The casing diameter is reduced. Okay, to accommodate for smaller blade length. But there are other designs where the casing diameter remains fixed. Okay, so it's like a cylinder, but the hub diameter, shaft diameter remains same, but a hub is mounted on the shaft. So you can see that this is the shaft, and it's not clear from here, but there is another cylinder or disc which is mounted on the shaft. Okay, so the diameter of those keep on increasing, so that ultimately, when the blade lengths are decreased, till the end of the blades are at the same height. Okay, from the central line. So that can be another design. For example, this type of design will be there. This will be the hub design, and this will be the outer cylinder casing. So somewhat like this. Okay. So the blades will be mounted here like this. The casing diameter remains constant, but the hub diameter increases. Then there is another type of design where both the casing diameter and the hub diameter change, somewhat similar to this, but the mean diameter remains fixed. Mean diameter is the average blade. Means if you take the center point of each blade, here you can see that if you join the center point of each blade, the diameter is decreasing. Okay. But in this case, the case that I am showing here, if you join the center point of each blade, that remains fixed. Okay. But the starting point of the blade and the ending point of the blade both are changing. So there are different designs. So let us go into more details of axial compressors. So as I was discussing, so there are two main parts for each stage. Okay, we will consider one stage, and each stage has two main parts. The rotor. So what happens in the rotor? We have discussed. Work is done on the fluid. From where is the work supplied? It is supplied through the shaft, and it comes in from the turbine. And the main role of the rotor is to increase the kinetic energy of the fluid. It also increases the static pressure. Okay, so it also acts like a diffuser. So both the kinetic energy as well as the static pressure increases. Then subsequently we have the stator. The stator is the part where the blades are mounted on the casing, so they are not rotating. And the stator acts like a diffuser. The channel between two stator blades act like a diffuser. So it slows down the flow and increases the static enthalpy and static pressure. So what are the changes that occur? So the static enthalpy, static pressure, and the static temperature also. Means if we increase the static enthalpy, obviously the static temperature will also increase, and static pressure will increase, and kinetic energy will decrease, means velocity will decrease. However, the stagnation enthalpy remains same in the stator. In the rotor, there is a large increase in stagnation enthalpy. Stagnation enthalpy, remember, if you use first law, stagnation enthalpy, increase in stagnation enthalpy means that we have provided some work input. There is no heat input. So using first law, in the rotor, you can, if you just do a first law calculation, you will see that change of stagnation enthalpy, increase of stagnation enthalpy is equal to the work provided. Okay. And in the stator, there is no work provided and there is no heat transfer also. So stagnation enthalpy at the inlet is equal to stagnation enthalpy at the outlet, as per the first law of thermodynamics. So this is the idea, and multiple stages are present. Each stage has a rotor and stator, and the similar pattern is repeated again and again. Similar velocity pattern, as we will study, will be repeated again and again. So let us look at how the velocity profiles look like. Any questions up to this point? Today, very less number of students are there. No, it has increased. I was also thinking whether to take, because of Diwali, this class, but most probably administration is going to ask about today's class, whether it has been taken or not. That's why I'm taking. Any questions? No. So let us try to look at one stage. Okay, the cross section of one stage. So here what I am showing one set of inlet guide vanes and then one stage consisting of a rotor and the stator. Okay, so we'll try to understand this. So this cross section that we are showing or we are seeing is at the mean blade height. Okay, mean blade height. It means that somewhere along the I've considered this type of arrangement. So if you take a cut along this midsection, okay, if you take a cut along this midsection, okay, and then see the velocity profile along that, that is what we are trying to see. Okay. So the flow should come in axially at the inlet guide. So this is the axial direction. Okay, this is the axial direction. This is now the axial direction. Okay. The axis or the shaft is along this direction, along the vertical direction now. So you have to imagine the same diagram that I was showing here, but now it is rotated in a vertical direction. Okay, somewhat like this. Why is it showing 3D rotation? Anyway, it could have shown. Like this. Okay. Now it looks like this. And the flow is coming. And first we are seeing the inlet guide vane. So first we are seeing the inlet guide vane. The flow comes in axially, and then it is rotated at an angle, and then it comes out at alpha 1 angle. Okay, and then because the rotor blade is moving itself, okay, the rotor blade is moving with a velocity u from the left to the right. Actually, it is not also this direction because no, it's fine. We are seeing this, but in this diagram, it is as if the rotor blade is coming out of the plane. Okay, so you have to imagine that when the rotor blade is along this line, then this velocity diagram holds true. Instead of in plane, when the rotor blade has come perpendicular to the plane of your screen. So at this moment, this velocity diagram is done. So at that moment, the rotor blade is moving from perpendicular to the screen, and it is going again towards the screen with a velocity of u. This velocity of the blade will depend on the radius. So at the root of the blade or the hub, the velocity is low. It is proportional to the radius, right? And at the tip, the velocity is highest, and at the mean diameter, we have some mean velocity which we will use for our calculation, which let us call as u. Okay. So because the rotor is moving at velocity u, I will discuss again this part. So I'm just showing it with respect to this. So with respect to the rotor blades, the velocity at the inlet seems or looks to be at a different angle. Okay, the relative velocity at the inlet. So the actual velocity from the outlet of the guide vanes is C1 at an angle alpha 1. The actual velocity is C1 at an angle alpha 1. But because the blade velocity itself, rotor blade velocity itself is u, so the relative velocity looks like V1 at an angle beta 1. Okay. So if I add V1 and u vectorially, I get the absolute velocity C1 at angle alpha 1. Okay. So because the relative velocity is at an angle B1, the rotor blade should be at an angle B1 at the inlet. Okay. So this angle is B1 or beta 1, sorry, instead of B1, let us call it as beta 1. So the inlet angle of the rotor blade is going to be beta 1. And if you are sitting on the rotor blades, you see the inlet velocity as V1, okay, which is the relative velocity. If you are outside, you will see a different velocity, inlet velocity as C1. But if you are sitting on the rotor blades, you see the relative velocity, and that is equal to V1. So then in the rotor, with respect to the rotor blades, the angle changes from beta 1 to beta 2. Okay, I will now remove this. The angle changes from beta 1 to beta 2. Okay. And velocity is slightly reduced from V1 to V2. Okay, because the rotors also act like diffuser. There is slight increase in pressure and decrease in relative kinetic energy. So V1 is reduced to V2, and the angle changes because of the shape of the rotor blade from beta 1 to beta 2. Okay. Now the blade velocity is still same, because at that height, which is the mean blade height that we have taken, at that height, the R radius remains same obviously, and omega is same, rotational speed. So omega into R, which is the blade velocity u, remains same. Okay. So at the outlet, we have V2 relative velocity and beta 2 angle, and the blade velocity is u. Okay. So the absolute velocity at the outlet is equal to C2 at an angle alpha 2. So the absolute velocity has increased from C1 to a larger value C2. Okay. And the outlet angle, absolute angle is alpha 2. The relative angle is beta 2. These beta 1 and beta 2 are known as rotor blade angles, okay, or blade angles. Rotor blade angles or blade angles. Okay. And so the flow comes in to the stator at angle alpha 2. Okay, so the inlet of the stator blade is at an angle alpha 2 because the stator is fixed. It sees the actual velocity. Okay, so the actual velocity of the fluid is C2 at an angle alpha 2. So the inlet velocity at the stator is also C2 at an angle alpha 2. And the stator acts like a diffuser, so the flow velocity is decreased, and the flow velocity is decreased to a lower velocity. In most cases, it is decreased to the velocity C1 again. Okay, so it is again decreased to the velocity C1, and the angle also changes from alpha 2 to lower value alpha 3. And again, in most cases, this alpha 3 is also kept equal to alpha 1. Okay, why this is kept? So I will repeat this part. Okay, so this at the outlet, the velocity is C3 and angle is alpha 3. both the velocity is reduced and angle is reduced. Typically, by design, the angle alpha 3 is kept equal to alpha 1, and the velocity c3 is kept equal to c1. Okay. So, because the angle is alpha 1 and the velocity is c1, it is similar to the flow pattern in this position. So again, we can have a similar set of rotor blades and similar set of stator blades, and again the same flow pattern will be repeated, same velocity profile will be repeated. Because we are at the same height, so blade velocity will still be u. And if we keep C1 equal to C3 and alpha 1 equal to alpha 3, the entire same velocity profile is repeated for all the stages. Okay. So by design, these are kept equal. So alpha 3 is equal to alpha 1. You can assume that alpha 3 is equal to alpha 1. Writing is very difficult using this mouse. Okay, and C3 equal to C1. So ultimately, what we are getting, if you consider a single stage consisting of rotor and stator, the velocity remains as C1. It had increased intermediately from C1 to C2 and again decreased to C1. But the pressure has increased. Pressure has increased first in the rotor and then subsequently again in the stator. And the static enthalpy has also increased. Okay. So as a result, we get higher pressure at the outlet of this stage. Same thing is repeated again and again, and finally you get much higher pressure. So diffusion and static enthalpy increase occurs in both rotor and stator, as I was saying. So diffusion occurs in the rotor as well as in the stator. C1 and C2 are absolute velocities. Okay. And V1 and V2 are the relative velocities. U is known as the blade velocity. Beta 1 and beta 2 are called as rotor blade angles, or simply blade angles sometimes. And alpha 1 and alpha 2. So typically this alpha 3 is also written as alpha 1 if we just repeat the same thing. And this velocity at the inlet will be written as C2, and velocity at the outlet is again written as C1 because it is equal to C3. So alpha 2 and alpha 1 are the stator blade angles. Okay. So except the inlet guide wave, all the other stages have the same angles repeated again and again. So if flow pattern and flow pattern or stage pattern is repeated, which means that it is easier to design and manufacture, because when you are calculating, you just have to calculate all the angles of the aerofoil structure, keeping them as same for all the stages. So C1 equal to C3 and alpha 1 equal to alpha 3. Also by design, the cross-sectional area is reduced such that you can see the cross-sectional area is reduced such that the axial velocity remains same. Mass flow rate remains same. So if you reduce the cross-sectional area according to the change in density, we can keep the axial velocity same. So CA1 equal to CA2 equal to CA3, where CA is the axial velocity. Okay. What is CA? CA is the velocity in this direction. This is the component CA. Again, this is the component CA. Component of flow in the axial direction. So this component, CA1 is the component at this point, CA2 is the component at this point, the outlet of the rotor, and CA3 is outlet of the stator. So they are also kept same, and we will call them as equal to CA. So this is done as the mass flow rate is constant and cross-sectional area is adjusted to keep CA constant. Any questions here? Or this mechanism is clear? If you can understand this mechanism, you will be able to solve any problem, because then all the problems and relations can be done just based on the velocity diagram. This is known as the velocity diagram. Okay, so based on the velocity diagram, we can calculate all the changes. I will keep this diagram open here. If you can see, if you are on a larger screen, you will be able to see, because we will keep referring to this. So we can write u. U is this velocity. We can write u as sum of two parts, So this first part is C1 sine alpha 1, C1 into sine alpha 1. And the second part is V1 sine beta 1. So U is equal to C1 sine alpha 1 plus V1 sine beta 1. It is also equal to Ca, this axial velocity component, Ca into tan alpha 1 plus Ca into tan beta 1. Okay. So Ca into tan alpha 1 plus beta 1, tan beta 1. Similarly, from this diagram, this is also Ca. Ca remains constant and U remains constant because the blade velocity obviously is constant at any point. So U is equal to Ca tan alpha 2, this part, plus Ca tan beta 2, okay, this part. So tan alpha 1 plus tan beta 1 is equal to tan alpha 2 plus tan beta 2. This type of relations you can derive easily if you draw the velocity diagram correctly. So we define a flow coefficient, which is the ratio of the axial velocity to the blade velocity. Okay, because this term comes again and again in the calculation, we define it as a flow coefficient, Ca by U, given as phi. So we can write phi as Ca by U is equal to 1 by tan alpha 2 plus tan beta 2 or 1 by tan alpha 1 plus tan beta 1. So these type of relations are useful while calculating or trying to find out the angles. So some of the angles are generally known by design. For example, inlet angle alpha 1 may be known, and we may need to find out the rotor blade angles for designing the rotor blade. So this type of relations can be used. So you don't need to memorize these things. You should just be able to draw the velocity diagram correctly and then find out all these relations when you are solving a problem, instead of trying to memorize and then forgetting something. You should just derive or whatever is required, because you will be solving numerically. So directly numerically, all these calculations can be done. Also, we can see that from this, because tan alpha 1 plus tan beta 1 is equal to tan alpha 2 plus tan beta 2. Tan alpha 1 minus tan alpha 2 is equal to tan beta 2 minus tan beta 1. Okay. So various relations can be derived. So now what is the work input to the stage? Work input only occurs in the rotor. There is no work change in the stator. Stator is a static device. So the rotor is being rotated by the shaft, and as a result, not as a result, it is being rotated because we are providing work input to the shaft from the turbine. Okay. So the work input is equal to the change in the angular momentum in the rotor multiplied by the mass flow rate. Okay. So m dot into change of angular momentum is u into, okay, u into, actually change of angular momentum is r into radius into Cw2 minus Cw1, that multiplied by the angular velocity gives the work input. Okay. So that comes out equal to u into Cw2, which is this component. Okay. Component in the wheel direction, rotating direction. Final component Cw2 minus the initial component Cw1. So this is the change that has occurred. Change that has occurred in the direction of rotation along the tangential direction or wheel direction, WHIRL, the rotational direction. Okay. So this results in the increase in overall, say, energy of the fluid, or increasing the kinetic energy plus the static enthalpy. So increasing overall energy of the fluid because of increasing this. So this multiplied, so wheel component multiplied by the radius gives the change in angular momentum, and that multiplied by the angular velocity gives us the work input. So omega into r into Cw2 minus Cw1. Omega into r is u. So u into Cw2 minus Cw1 is the work input for one stage of the rotor, multiplied by the mass flow rate gives us the total work input or power input. So if we write the specific work input, we can divide it by the mass flow rate. So we get specific work input to be equal to u Cw2 minus Cw1. Now Cw2 is nothing but Ca into tan alpha 2. Okay. And Cw1 is nothing but Ca into tan alpha 1. So we can write this as u Ca tan alpha 2 minus tan alpha 1. Because we have seen that tan alpha 2 minus tan alpha 1 will be tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2 from this relation. Okay. This can also be written as UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2. So in terms of change in blade angle, we can find out what is the work input. Okay. In terms of change in rotor blade angle or stator blade angle, we will be able to find out what is the work input. So this is how the work input is related for a single stage with the stage properties like the blade angle, the velocity of the blade, and the axial velocity of flow. Okay. So for each stage, this is how we can calculate what is the work input if we know what are these values of these parameters. Okay. So let us try to understand once what happens in terms of thermodynamics, what happens in the rotor and stator. Okay. So anyway, what we have derived is sufficient if you try to solve any problem. But to improve our understanding, we will try to understand the mechanism through a TS diagram. Okay. So at the inlet, the velocity is C1 at the inlet of the rotor. Okay, the actual velocity is C1. So at the outlet of the guide vane, the actual velocity is C1. So say the static enthalpy at this point is 1. Okay, the static enthalpy at this point is 1. So static temperature is T1. Okay. Diagram is not accurate. Static temperature is T1. Okay, at this point. So the stagnation enthalpy and stagnation temperature at this point can be calculated based on the inlet velocity. So stagnation enthalpy is static enthalpy H1 plus C1 square by 2. Okay, and stagnation temperature T01 is equal to T1 plus C1 square by 2 Cp. Okay, so this height is C1 square by 2 Cp. I hope this is clear. If something is not clear, please ask me because these are very important. Okay. This height is C1 square by 2 Cp. So this is the stagnation enthalpy at the inlet of the rotor blade. So what happens in the rotor blade? We provide work. Okay. As a result, the stagnation enthalpy increases significantly. Okay. So it goes from 0.1 to 0.2. So this is the new stagnation enthalpy at the outlet of the rotor blade at 0.2. Okay, at 0.2 at the outlet of the rotor blade. This is the stagnation enthalpy. So this is for a real case where there is frictional loss, and as a result, you can see that entropy has increased. Okay, so there will be some pressure loss, but the stagnation enthalpy increase is equal to the work input. Okay. So at this point, what is the actual velocity? Actual velocity is C2. C2 is much greater than C1. So C1, C2 square by 2 or C2 square by 2 Cp is also much greater than C1 square by 2 Cp. So the static temperature is much lower than stagnation temperature T02. Okay. So this is the static temperature point. Okay, T2 at this point. So you can see static temperature has also increased from T1 to T2. This is because of the diffusion effect in the rotor. So in the rotor also has acted like a diffuser and has increased the pressure and static temperature. Okay, pressure has increased from P1 to P2. Static temperature has increased from T1 to T2. But the rotor has also increased the kinetic energy. So initially it was C1 square by 2, now it is C2 square by 2. So as a result, the total stagnation enthalpy is much higher. Okay. So the length of this line is C2 square by 2 Cp. So T2 plus C2 square by 2 Cp gives us T02. Okay. So this is at the outlet of the rotor. This is the same point. So sometimes students get confused. Okay. 2 and 02 are the same points. Similarly, 1 and 01 are the same points. So they are just denoting different properties. 2 is denoting static properties and 02 is denoting stagnation properties. Okay. So, but they are at the same point. at the outlet of the rotor. Now what happens in the stator? There is no change in stagnation property because there is no work input, there is no heat transfer. So stagnation enthalpy remains same. No change in stagnation enthalpy. Okay, stagnation pressure decreases because of frictional losses, entropy increases, and you can see that if I keep the stagnation enthalpy same but move towards the right side, the pressure, constant pressure line is a different constant pressure line and is lower than the previous constant pressure line. So the stagnation pressure decreases from P02 to P03, but the stagnation enthalpy and stagnation temperature remains same. It is equal to T02. T03 is equal to T02. So what change occurs? Velocity is reduced from C2 to again C3. C3 is equal to C1. So C1 is smaller than C2. So C3 is smaller than C2. Okay. So as a result, this line, which is C3 square by 2 Cp, is much smaller than this C2 square by 2 Cp. So this point T3 is much near to the point T03. Okay. So what has happened? So the kinetic energy has been converted to further rise of static pressure and static temperature. So static enthalpy increases and kinetic energy decreases, keeping the stagnation enthalpy constant. Okay. So at the exit of the stator, finally, we have this static enthalpy equal to H03 and static temperature T03. So the static temperature is increased from T01 to T03 by this much. Okay. This is equal to the work input to the rotor. Okay. And Cp into this much, Cp into T03 minus T01 is the work input, or Cp into T02 minus T01 is the work input. And kinetic energy had increased and again decreased. So final kinetic energy remains same as the initial kinetic energy, C1 square by 2. Okay, because C3 equal to C1, kinetic energy remains same. So again, this will be passed on to the next stage. Again, the same thing will occur. Again, the stagnation enthalpy will increase. Static enthalpy will also increase from 1 to 3, similar to like this. Kinetic energy will remain same. Okay. So this is what happens thermodynamically in a single stage of axial flow compressor. Any questions? No questions. Is it clear to everyone what is happening? These are very important.
Yes,
okay. Once you can draw these things, everything becomes very easy. You don't have to memorize anything. Just the concept needs to be clear. So delta T, which is the change in stagnation and temperature, can be written as T03 minus T01, which is also equal to T02 minus T01. Okay. So this Cp into delta 3, remember, is equal to the work input. Okay. Cp into delta 3 is the change in stagnation enthalpy, and by first law of thermodynamics, that is equal to work input. And we have found the work input to be equal to UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2. Okay. So work input is UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2, which is equal to Cp into delta T. So this gives us delta T equal to UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2 by Cp. So this is in terms of blade property, and then velocities, which are known velocities. U velocity will be known based on the design rotational speed of the blade and radius at which we are calculating. And Ca is a design parameter. Your system is designed keeping a constant Ca in mind, depending on the inlet relative Mach number. Okay. So this gives us the rise in stagnation temperature. Okay. So the efficiency, isentropic efficiency of the compressor can be written as T03s. So when we were doing the calculations for the entire compressor, we were doing something like this. T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. Okay. So this is the ideal. So if we go from P01 to P03, forget about intermediate stator and rotor. If I consider this stage as a single entity, so instead of going from 01 to 03s, we are going from 01 to 03. Okay, something like that. I will delete this. It looks horrible. We are going from 01 to 03. Okay, actually we are going in two steps, from 01 to 02 and 02 to 03. But the change is 01 to 03. So the efficiency can be written as T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. Actual ideal work input by the actual work input. Okay, for the same increasing pressure. T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. So we can write this as, I think this diagram will be more suitable. T03s minus T01 is equal to eta C into T03 minus T01. So if I take T01 common from this side, we are left with T03s by T01. So T03s by T01 for this isentropic process, we can write this as P03 by P01 whole to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma. Okay. Then minus 1 is there because of the second term. And on the right hand side, we can write eta C into T03 minus T01, which is equal to delta T, UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2 by Cp. Okay. So from this, if you rearrange the terms, you get P03 by P01 equal to 1 plus eta C UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2 Cp T01 whole to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. So this is the pressure increase that occurs in a single stage of axial compressor in terms of design parameters. So beta 1 minus tan beta 2 gives us the change in the blade angle. Okay, is a measure of change in the blade angle, tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2. Beta 1 was higher, beta 2 is lower. It gives us a measure of change in the blade angles. U is the blade velocity, okay, which we can calculate. Ca is the axial flow velocity based on the mass flow rate. It is kept and cross sectional area. So it is kept constant by design. Eta C is the isentropic efficiency of the compressor, depends on the manufacturing processes. And T01 is the inlet stagnation temperature, which is not in our control. Okay. Maximum blade velocity U is governed by the centrifugal stresses at the tip of the blade. Okay. So not at the tip of the blade. Maximum stress will occur. It depends on the length of the blade. Maximum stress will be generated at the root, right? So maximum limit of the blade speed is governed by the centrifugal stresses. Okay, so we cannot arbitrarily increase U to increase the pressure ratio. It is fixed. Maximum limit is of Ca, as I was explaining. Ca is a design parameter. It is governed by the inlet Mach number. Okay, so again, you cannot design it to be in arbitrarily high. It has to be in the subsonic region. So you cannot arbitrarily keep on increasing it to increase P03 by P01. Okay. And also we cannot have a very large change in the angle. The other way to increase the pressure ratio would be to increase the have a very large change in angle from beta 1 to beta 2. But if you change the angle by very large amount, means decrease the angle by very large amount, because the shape of the blade will be the flow direction will change drastically, it will lead to lot of losses. Okay, there is chance of separation and there will be lot of losses because flow is occurring against adverse pressure gradient. Okay, pressure is increasing in the flow direction, so it is more difficult for the flow to occur. So high deflection in rotor blades also increases losses, so that is also a limit. So as a result, you have a limit on what is the maximum pressure ratio you can obtain. Okay, so typically it is around 1.5. So now we'll finish. Till a couple of minutes are left. So actual work done is actually slightly less than the work that we have calculated. We have calculated the work input as UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2 and delta T to be equal to UCA tan beta 1 minus tan beta 2 by Cp. But actual work done is slightly less. So we use a factor called work done factor, omega or lambda. So we will use omega, where omega has a value less than 1. Okay. Why this actual work done is slightly less? Okay. So what happens is that the flow velocity, although we are considering it to be CA everywhere, okay, along the length of the blade. So if this is the length of the blade, this is the hub section of the blade, means the root of the blade, and this is the tip of the blade. Okay, and we were considering the midpoint of the blade for all the calculation and calculating the delta T based on the midpoint. But actually, what happens, because the flow is passing through an annular region, okay, a boundary layer effect comes into picture. Boundary layer effect forms. Okay, so the velocity near the wall, so near the outer wall, near the casing, and near the inner wall, near the hub or the shaft, is lower as compared to center line velocity. Okay, so the velocity along the length of the blade also changes. It is not exactly equal to CA. It is lower near the walls and higher at the center. Okay, so this effect is less in the first stage, but as the flow proceeds along multiple stages, it it becomes more and more, goes more and more towards something like a fully developed flow. So it becomes more and more like this, the flow pattern. Okay. So because it deviates from the constant velocity CA, which we are using for this calculation, the actual work output is actually it gets reduced. Without going into too much details, means if you want to accurately capture this change, you have to find out the variation of velocity along the length. Okay. So without doing that, empirically, a factor is used which is known as this work done factor or omega. Okay. So which gives us how much is the actual work in relation to the ideal work. Okay. So if omega is 0.98, it means that the work that is supplied for increasing the pressure is actually 98% as compared to ideal work. So accordingly the pressure rise also will be less. Okay. So for the first stage, the omega is much larger because the flow pattern is still somewhat very near to CA everywhere. The second stage it is more reduced, 0.93. Third stage it is more reduced, and then it goes to somewhat constant value. Okay, asymptotically like this. So it decreases from 1 to a lower value as we keep on increasing the number of stages. Okay. So for each stage, although the velocity pattern remains similar, the work input and as a result the pressure rise actually decreases slightly. Okay. We'll stop here. A small thing was left, but time has run out. We'll stop here, and next week classes are supposed to be in hybrid mode. I don't know how that will work out. I am slightly worried about the class pattern. This means if everyone was in the classroom, it would have been okay.